Today on Amazing Dinosaurs channel, we are checking out a collection of Jurassic World figures that I predict will be in the next Jurassic World 4 movie. And in a little bit, I've got some brand new ones that we're gonna open up. The first that we're gonna check out is, of course, the Tyrannosaurus Rex. How could this dinosaur not be in the next Jurassic World movie? And this specific T-Rex figure is actually from the last movie called Jurassic World Dominion. The next dinosaur that I think will be in Jurassic World 4 is the Spinosaurus. This is actually the Camp Cretaceous figure, and it is even a little bit larger than the T-Rex figure. Also, I really hope that they bring back the Indominus Rex. This new dinosaur was made known from the first Jurassic World movie, and this figure is actually the battle damage edition, meaning with this button right here, you can actually hide the battle damage on the side. And there's a button on its tail for the roaring action. Next up for my predictions, I've got the huge Giganotosaurus figure. We saw this dinosaur in the last Jurassic World Dominion movie, and this figure is actually the super colossal Giganotosaurus, so as you can see, it is way larger than any of the other figures that I have. Up next is the mighty Mosasaurus figure. This dinosaur was from the first Jurassic World movie, and I think it is one of the best aquatic dinosaurs that they've shown, so I hope they bring it back. And with this Mosasaurus figure, you can move all the fins around and open and close the jaw. Over here, we've got another T-Rex figure. This is a Battle Edition T-Rex. I think it might be from Camp Cretaceous, and you can see that it's got some battle damage slashes right on its side. Plus, the figure is fully posable with its arms, legs, tail, neck, and its head, and it has a button to chomp the jaw. Up next for my Jurassic World 4 predictions is the Therizinosaurus. This dinosaur had an epic battle in the Jurassic World Dominion movie, and I wouldn't be surprised if they brought it back again for another fight. This figure has a fully posable body and an attack button on its tail. Over here, we've got the Carnotaurus, one of my favorite carnivores. This figure features posable legs and arms, and an attack tail that moves its head and chomps its jaw. This is another T-Rex figure, but this is actually an older figure, I think from the first Jurassic World movie. It has a fully tan body, other than a little bit of gray on its face, and it features posable arms, legs, and an attack button on its back for chomping. I think Jurassic World 4 might also have a Pentaceratops. This is one massive dinosaur and it has one of the biggest frills that I've seen. And this figure has two buttons, one for a head ramming action and the other for a torso swinging action. Here's another herbivore figure. This is a Sinoceratops. Jurassic World has a few different versions of this figure. This is in the light gray with some tan and yellow detailing, and it features an attack tail that moves its head. My next prediction is another awesome predator. This is an Allosaurus. I believe this figure was released with Camp Cretaceous, and it features posable arms, legs, and tail, and has a slide lever action on its back for roaring and chomping. Right over here is another Allosaurus figure. I believe this one was released, I think, from Fallen Kingdom. And this Allosaurus features a dark gray body with yellow detailing. It has posable arms and legs, and a single button on its back for the chomping action. All right, let's dig into these brand new ones that I just bought. This first box has a Scorpiovenator and an Iguanodon. These are part of the Dino Trackers Roarin' Battle Pack. Here is the Scorpiovenator. I have one other Scorpiovenator figure, but this is a whole new color scheme. It's got dark brown, some orange, and then the light underbelly. Plus, it has a chomping action. And here is the Iguanodon figure. I have a few other Iguanodon figures that look pretty similar to this, but once again, this has totally different coloring. This one features a mostly tan body with the brown detailing along the top of its body. And of course, you can press down on its body for a roaring action. Next up to open up from my brand new figures is this Hammond Collection Ankylosaurus. And let's attach that tail. All right, this figure is looking quite a bit different from many of my other Ankylosaurus figures. First off, it's a bit larger than many of my other Ankylosauruses, and it has much more natural coloring with the dark green on top and the lighter underbelly. But best of all, like all of the Hammond Collection figures, this figure is super posable. It looks like its tail has 3 or 4 different joints, so you can move it around in a really lifelike way. Of course, you can move the legs around and pose them in all sorts of ways. And coolest of all, you can move its head around and even open and close its mouth. And next up is the Hammond Collection Dilophosaurus. And here it is. So once again, it is very posable all over its body. And best of all, this figure actually features a removable frill. So you can actually take it off and replace it with this little piece as if the frills are closed. Next up over here, I've got the Sound Surge Indominus Rex figure. This figure is a lot smaller than many of my other IREXs. I also think Jurassic World might have a Scorpius Rex in it. This figure is quite large and it features 2 attack buttons, one for the jaw and one for arm slashing. And of course, what would be a Jurassic World movie without a Stegosaurus in it? This figure features the brown body with some green and tan detailing, and it has the attack feature where you can swing its tail. I also hope that Jurassic World 4 has some baryonyxes in it. This baryonyx is a bright green color with some brown detailing, and of course has a roar action. And I also have this older baryonyx figure from Fallen Kingdom with the orange highlight on the top of its head. Here's another dinosaur specifically from the older Jurassic World movies. This is an Endoraptor. This is the basic figure, so you can move its arms, its legs, and its tail. Next up, I've got a Carcharodontosaurus figure. This one is in the light tan yellow coloring with some brown and orange detailing, and it has an attack button on its back for chomping its jaw. Here I've got another Dilophosaurus figure. This figure is a lot larger than the Hammond Collection version, and it is the basic version, so you can move its frills back and forth, as well as its arms, its legs, and its tail. Jurassic World 4 has gotta have some winged dinosaurs too. This is a Pteranodon, and this figure features the orange coloring along its wings and the brown body. Here's another dinosaur from Jurassic World Dominion that I think might show up again. It's an Atrociraptor, and this figure is the basic edition, so you can move its arms, its legs, and its tail. Here's another Ankylosaurus figure. You can see that it's quite a bit smaller than the Hammond Collection, and it still has some pretty realistic coloring with the green and the gray and the brown. Plus, there's an action button on this one for swinging the tail. Next up is another Dilophosaurus figure, but this one is battery operated, so let's hear some sounds from it. This figure over here is an old Velociraptor figure from the first Jurassic World movie. It features posable legs and posable arms. Next up, also from the Jurassic World Dominion movie, is this basic Pyroraptor figure. And I really hope they bring this one back for the 4th movie. This Pyroraptor is the basic figure, so you can move its arms, its legs, and its tail. Over here, I've got another Indominus Rex figure. This one is older, and I believe it was called the Bite and Thrash Indominus Rex. Check it out, another Ankylosaurus figure. This one features much brighter coloring all over its body, and has a slide lever action on its back to swing its tail around. This figure set is from Jurassic World Dominion. It features a Parasaurolophus and Owen with his lasso. Up next is another Pteranodon figure. This one is a whole lot smaller, but it has some pretty cool detailing along its wings and a button on its back for flapping the wings. And of course, one that I'm pretty sure that they'll have in the next movie is Velociraptor Blue. And not only that, but we also saw Velociraptor Beta in the last movie as well. So I think that they'll be bringing these Velociraptors back. I've also got a few more Velociraptor figures in here. This first one has a light green body with the darker detailing along the top and features posable arms, legs, and a mouth. And this second Velociraptor features a dark gray body with yellow detailing and the posable arms, legs, and jaw. My next prediction is a Stygimoloch dinosaur. This figure specifically is pretty small and has a dark body, but some dark purple coloring along its neck and its head, and it features a headbutting action when you press down on the tail. We saw some Apatosaurus figures in the last movie, but I think that they might bring back the Brachiosaurus dinosaurs. This figure is a baby Brachiosaurus and has a light green body with a darker green along the top and has opposable jaw, neck, and legs. Over here is another Parasaurolophus figure. I believe this one is also from Jurassic World Dominion, and it features a posable head, arms, and legs. I've predicted a few other horned dinosaurs, but I think Jurassic World will also have Triceratops dinosaurs in it. This figure is a lot smaller than many of the other horned dinosaurs that I have, and it features battle damage that you can open and close on the side. And here is another Atrociraptor figure. This one's a lot smaller than the one that we saw earlier, but it has a darker red coloring with the gray detailing, and it has battle damage that you can open and close on the side. Right over here is a miniature Dilophosaurus figure. It has the brown body with the blue detailing, and it still has the frills on the front that you can open and close. And last of all is a teeny tiny Spinosaurus figure. It still has the giant spine on its back, and it has a chomping action as well. This is a collection of 100 Jurassic World figures, and I'm going to be showing you all of them today. Let's get started with this giant Spinosaurus figure. This specific figure is actually from the Legacy collection, and they don't make this one anymore, so it's pretty hard to find. It's got the dark green coloring, different than all the other Spinosaurus figures, and of course the jaw-chomping button. Next, we've got a big Tyrannosaurus Rex figure. I believe this one is from Camp Cretaceous. It's got a light brown body, its arms, its legs, its tail, and its head are adjustable, and there's a button for chomping. Next up, we've got another T-Rex figure. This one's pretty similar to the one that we just saw, except it's got some slightly darker coloring, darker brown on the top, and of course the jaw-chomping button. Over here is an herbivore dinosaur. This is the Pentaceratops. It's got a huge variety of horns on its head and on its frill as well. And it's got two action buttons, one to move the head up and down, and one to swing the torso back and forth. Moving right along here, we've got the Sound Surge Carnotaurus from Jurassic World Dominion. Let's check out these sound effects. Up next is a figure that I bought pretty recently, actually. This is the Hammond Collection Concavinator. Check out that really cool coloring with the orange fading into the brown and the blue, and the orange and red stripes along the top. Up in front here, we've got another giant T-Rex figure. This one is a bright orange color, and it has the same movements and actions as the T-Rexes that we saw earlier. This is an Indominus Rex figure, but it's actually not made by Hasbro. It's made by a model company, so it looks a lot different and it has a lot more detail than many of the Hasbro figures. I love those little spikes running along its back and on the top of its head. Right next to that, we've got a weird looking dinosaur. This is the Sarcosuchus. It's got a super short and super long body. It's got some really cool spikes that run all the way down its back to its tail, and you can use the tail to control the head and chomp the jaw too. This next one is an Ouranosaurus from Hasbro. I believe this is an herbivore dinosaur. Definitely doesn't look like a scary predator, and it's got some cool coloring on its body. Plus, an action button right on the side to move its head up and down. I've got a super bright dinosaur in here. This is a Triceratops. It looks a lot less realistic than many of my other figures, but it's still pretty cool. It's got some red on the top and the blue. Kind of looks like a baby Triceratops. Way in the back here, we've got another Indominus Rex figure, but this one looks quite a bit different. It's got really short legs and a giant head. This is from the Rowdy Roars collection, and it actually has a few different actions. You can get it to shut its mouth, and you can use the tail to hold the head up. Way in the back here, we've got a Cryolophosaurus figure with the dark blue and orange coloring. And this figure comes with sound effects that happen when you move its tail around. Up next, let's go with this Ceratosaurus figure in the dark green and black coloring. And it's got a slide lever action at the top of its head for chomping and roaring. This right here is the Jurassic World Dominion Triceratops figure. It's got some unique coloring with the orange in the front, right next to the dark green, and then some lighter green along the back of its body. Plus, it has a roaring action when you press down on its back. Ooh, check it out. Here is a Therizinosaurus figure. This has some bright red and some soft blue coloring. Of course, it's got the huge claws on its hands, and it has a really long neck and a bunch of small teeth in its mouth too. Over here, we've got a few flying dinosaurs. These are smaller figures. I believe that both of these are pteranodon figures. This first one's got some cool reflective gold coloring on its head. The rest of its body is like a dark green color. And this second one is more of a grayish color. It still has some yellow on its face, but this one actually has a button on its back to flap its wings. Looks like we've got another big dinosaur in here. This one looks quite a bit different. It's still made by Hasbro, but it's a different toy line than the rest. But check it out, it still has a chomping action when you press down on its body. Looks like we've got yet another T-Rex in here. This one is the dark green with black detailing along the top and is one of my personal favorites. Its limbs are adjustable just like the other T-Rexes, and it has the jaw chomping action. Check it out, here is the second Therizinosaurus of the collection, and this one is made by Hasbro for the Jurassic World Dominion series. It's got a bunch of cool feather texturing all over its body with the red stripe, and it has a jaw chomping action that you can activate by pressing the button on its tail. Oh, look at this, way down here, we've got a Lego collection. This might be a Carnotaurus, I think, because it's got those two huge horns at the top of its head. It's got some pretty crazy coloring overall though. It's got bright blue, some neon orange. Check out those yellow eyes too. Here's another Pteranodon figure, but it is way larger than the ones that we saw earlier. You can unfold its wings to show the full wingspan and check out the detailing along its body, which is pretty neat. And it's got two action buttons on its back, one for the jaw and one for flapping its wings. I've got another big Lego dinosaur in here. This one might be a Baryonyx, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments below what dinosaur species you think this is. In the back here, we've got a good old Ankylosaurus figure. This one has the blue top with the spikes all over the top and the sides, and a slide lever action to swing its tail around. Here is a Dilophosaurus figure. This is a basic series Dilophosaurus, so there's no action button, but it's still got some ginormous frills in the front with a huge yellow crown and a dark red body with adjustable limbs. Looks like I've got some Velociraptor figures in here as well. Let's check out these three. This first one is an extreme battle damage Velociraptor from Jurassic World Dominion. Check that out, you can turn it on and off. There's also the Velociraptor blue figure with opposable legs, arms, and mouth. And there's this crazy looking Velociraptor that has some really cool detailing along its back. Plus, it's got some golden eyes too. Up next, we've got the Majingasaurus. This figure is a little bit bigger than the Velociraptor figures, and it's got some yellow, blue, and green on its body. Plus, you can use the tail to move the head around. In the back here, we've got what looks like a Brachiosaurus figure with dark red and some yellow detailing along with the black too. Check out those green eyes. I found another Velociraptor figure. This is an older figure. It's got the tan with the green striping, but unfortunately there is no action button on this figurine. Here's another Velociraptor figure from the same era. This one has the dark green with black stripes on the top and the yellow underbelly. But once again, sadly, there is no action button on this figure. Check out this weird looking dinosaur. This figure is designed to hang on to your finger, and it actually is battery powered with sound effects and with movement. Over here, we've got the Sauropelta with the light green and dark green coloring. Here is the Zuniceratops figure with the yellow and gray coloring. It's got the two huge horns on its head. There's also a few Pachycephalosaurus figures in here. This one has battle damage on the side that you can open and close, and the other Pachycephalosaurus actually has a headbutting action when you move its tail. Here's another winged figure. This is a Dimorphodon. It's It's got the fiery red and orange coloring on the underside of its wings and the dark green along the top. Oh, look at that. There's actually another Sauropelta figure right here. This one has the brown and clay red coloring. Next up is a small figure. This is a Gallimimus, although it's got some pretty detailed coloring running along its back all the way to its head. Here's a Stygimoloch figure. It's got a hard head just like the Pachycephalosaurus, but it's also got some spikes coming out right behind it. And on this figure, you can use the tail for the headbutting action too. Right over here, we've got an Atrociraptor figure. This one is tan, and it is in the stealth pose. You can see it's crawling along the ground. This one looks to be like a Kentrosaurus figure. This one was not made by Hasbro, so it looks quite a bit different, but it's still got those iconic horns coming right outside of the shoulders. Up next is a miniature Dilophosaurus figure. Check out that super bright and colorful frills. Now here's a teeny tiny dinosaur figure. This is from the Snap Squads. And this is a Triceratops figure. Look at that, it's even got teeth on the inside. That's a nice little detail. And the last figure in this first bin is the Elaphrosaurus figure. I think this one's pretty recent, came out in 2023. Let's dive into our second bin of dinosaur figures right here. But before we do, let's check out these officially licensed Jurassic World Heroes of Goo-Jitsu figures. This first one is a Mosasaurus figure. It's got a chomp attack action. Looks like it has fish on the inside or something like that from that picture. So let's open it up and check it out. Here we go, and wow, this thing is extremely squishy and stretchy. It also comes with that chomping action, so you can snap its jaw shut, just like that. But the biggest feature of this is its gooey body. Super squishy, it's still got the texture like a normal Mosasaurus, and it's got its fins as well. But when you squeeze it, let's see what's on the inside of it. All right, there is fish bones in there. That is super crazy looking. Wow, they're just floating in all that goo. It's pretty relaxing to squeeze, actually. That's really cool that they actually put something inside the goo, so you can only see it when you expand it. The other Goo-Jitsu figure that I got for Jurassic World is this Pyroraptor. It also has the chomp attack action, and instead of having goo on the inside, this one is super stretchy. So let's open it up and see. Oh yeah, this one feels totally different from the Mosasaurus. It's actually like pretty hard. You can squeeze it and it moves, but it doesn't have the goo on the inside like the other figure does. You can open and close its mouth for that jaw chomping action. And this one has some feather texturing on its body as well. It has some huge feathers on its arms. Now this figure is supposed to stretch really far, so let's see if we can stretch it. Oh, look at that. There are some different things on the inside of even this figure. Wow, that is super stretchy. It's really strong and hard to stretch. Let's see if we can find out what is that. It looks like feathers are on the inside of this figure. All right, let's get back to our regular figures. I've got an Albertosaurus figure right here with the green and the orange striping on the side. It also has a chomp button on its tail too. Here is the Sound Surge Indominus Rex figure. It's got the classic gray coloring with a little bit of brown and the spikes all over its body, and of course some really cool sound effects. Here's a pretty new figure. This is the Siamosaurus from Jurassic World Dominion. It stands on all four legs. It has some pretty cool paint detailing on its body. It's got a huge spine just like a Spinosaurus, and a jaw-chopping action by pressing the button on its tail. Back here is a Carnotaurus figure with a dark brown and black coloring. It's got a little bit of battle damage right on its nose, and it has posable legs, arms, and a tail, and you can use the tail to move the head around too. Check it out, here is the Hammond Collection Triceratops figure. This one is way more posable than the standard figures, and I think this one looks a bit more lifelike because of how detailed it is. Look at all that wear and tear on its horns. That's really cool. This is the Tarbosaurus figure. It's got a mostly dark body. It has some black striping along its back, and the brightest part is its neck and its chin. It's also got these really cool huge spines that run all the way down its tail, and of course a button on its tail for the chomping action. Up next is the Carcharodontosaurus figure. This figure too has some spikes running down its back to its tail, and it also has an action button for the chomping action too. Plus, all of its limbs are posable too. From Jurassic World Dominion, this is the Rajasaurus figure. It's a bit smaller than some of the other Predator figures, but it has a really cool chomping action when you press down on its body. This is an aquatic dinosaur. I believe it's called the Kronosaurus. It's got some huge teeth in its mouth, as well as some teeny tiny ones. And it has an action button on its back, so you can swing its head back and forth. Over here, we've got another Carnotaurus figure. This one looks quite a bit different though. It's a lot more bright in color. Its spikes on its back are this gold color. The horns are also a bright color too. And it has this really big action button on its back for chomping. Way back here is an herbivore. This is the Spinosaurus with the light green and the bright yellow coloring. And this figure has a roaring action when you press down on its body. Oh, look at this. This is actually another Spinosaurus figure, but this one is in the gray and tan coloring. And instead of just a simple roaring action, it actually has a tail that moves the head around with sound effects. Here is the Parasaurolophus figure. It's mostly yellow, it's got some brown striping with two action buttons. One controls the head, moves it up and down, and the other button controls its tail. Check it out, we've got another Lego Jurassic World figure. This one, I believe, is a Brachiosaurus figure because it's got a huge body that walks on all four legs, and it's got this really long and flexible neck. Pretty cool, it's got some cool slash detailing on its body, and it's pretty large for a Lego figure. Next up is the Metriacanthosaurus figure in the yellow and green color. Let's check out that chomp action. Back here is a model T-Rex figure. Looks like it's an orange color. It's got some really cool muscle detailing all over its body. And here's another Lego figure. This one though is a T-Rex. Check that out. It's a dark brown color. It has some darker brown detailing all over its body, and you can even open and close its jaw. This next figure is not a dinosaur. It is actually a human inside one of those balls from the Jurassic World movie that you can drive around in. It's pretty cool. This is a baby Brachiosaurus figure with the gray and purple-ish color on the top. Let's check out these Stegosauruses next. I've actually got quite a few in here. This first one is a newer one. It's got the brown, green, and clay red coloring, and it has the action when you press down on its spine, it swings its tail back and forth. Down here somewhere, oh here it is the baby version of that Stegosaurus. It's got the same type of coloring with the green and the clay red on the top, but it is a whole lot smaller. Look at that, even its tail is really small. Let's see what other Stegosaurus is. Here's one. This Stegosaurus is brown, it's got some tan and green, and this one has two action buttons. The first moves its head up and down, and the second button does the classic tail swinging action. And we've got another Triceratops in here. This one is in a gray and darker gray color. It's got the light pink underbelly, and of course the tail slashing action. Oh, look at that. I've actually got another one with identical coloring in here. So this one is actually just a twin. Here's another large dinosaur. This one's actually really cool. This is a Velociraptor Beta figure. And it's pretty cool because it has some lifelike movements. You can have it walk side to side like this, and you can even have it chomp by pressing down on its body. I've got another Ankylosaurus figure in here. This one has the gray, green, and brown coloring, plus a button for the tail swinging action. I see a few Baryonyx figures in here. This first one, I believe, is Baryonyx Grim, or Limbo, maybe? I actually can't remember their name. It's got the bright green coloring and the action button on the top for chomping its jaw. Here is the second Baryonyx figure in here with totally different coloring. I love the bright blue coloring along the top of its head, and the slide lever action for the roaring and sound effects. And the third Baryonyx is right here. It's got battle damage on its neck and on its leg, and of course it has a button for the chomping action. Looks like I've got a few Ceratosaurus figures in here as well. This first one I think is from Camp Cretaceous. It's got the iconic red coloring running all the way up to its head with the slide lever action for roaring and sound effects. And this other Ceratosaurus is actually a Hammond collection figure. It's got some pretty similar coloring to the Ceratosaurus we just saw, but its limbs are way more posable, and I think there's a bit more texturing on its skin too. Hidden in the bottom here is another Carnotaurus figure. This one is from the Fallen Kingdom collection, so it's actually a bit older than a lot of these other figures. And it's got the button on its back for the chomping action. Let's see, what's next? Let's go with this Allosaurus figure. We haven't seen that many Allosauruses in this collection, but this one is probably one of my favorites because of its color. Plus, it's got those little spikes on the top of its head that run down its back, and of course, a slide lever action for roaring with sound effects. Here's another ginormous winged dinosaur. I believe it's actually another Pteranodon figure. Once its wings are opened up, you can see that there are two buttons, one for its mouth and one to flap the wings. This next figure is the Rowdy Roars Atrociraptor. Let's press that button on the top of its head. Oh, you know what? Here's another Atrociraptor figure, and I got this one pretty recently too. It has some really cool bright red coloring along its arms and on its shoulders, and it's got this interesting backpack tracker system on it too. Down at the bottom here, here's another one of those figures that fit on your finger. But just like that, they rest on your finger, and they have sound effects and movement too. Look at that, even its eyes blink. This next figure is a classic Triceratops figure. It's got some bright red coloring though, which is a cool feature. I've also got another Stegosaurus in here. It's got some pretty realistic coloring and some bright spines. Here is a very small Parasaurolophus figure. It's got some cool brown coloring with some lighter brown on the sides, and it looks like it has some tiny yellow eyes. This next figure down here, I believe, is called a Protoceratops. This is a pretty weird looking dinosaur. It's got some bright coloring all over its body too. Up next, I think I've got a couple Herrerasaurus figures. This first figure is a battle damaged one that you can open and close right on the side. And this other figure is not a battle damage edition, but it has some gray and white detailing. I've also got a bright Monolophosaurus figure right here, and it has a chomping action that's activated by moving the tail. This one's pretty cool. This is actually a Dilophosaurus without the frills, which, as it turns out, may be fictional from the Jurassic Park movie. I've got a few more Velociraptor figures in here. This first one looks a lot like Velociraptor Blue, but it's not made by Hasbro. It's still got the iconic blue stripe running down its side. And there's also this similar looking Velociraptor. It's got some white with some black spots on its body and a little bit of red along the top of its head. And this one is made by Mattel. It features some bright red coloring with purple stripes running down the sides. All right, only a few left. This one, I'm actually not sure what it is, but it looks like it's holding an egg. Maybe it's stealing it. Comment below if you recognize this dinosaur species. Here's a crazy looking dinosaur that walks on all four legs. It looks kind of like a Sarcosuchus, but I'm actually not sure. And this figure is really feathered. Check out all that feather design on its tail and on its arms and its back. And it's got a pretty wild looking head too.
Today we've got a T-Rex versus I-Rex haul. We've got a ton of figures and we're gonna be putting them over here to face off against each other. Let's first set up these super colossal figures. This is the Camp Cretaceous Indominus Rex. It's got a super bumpy texture all over its body and it's got some of my favorite teeth in my entire collection. For the T-Rex side is another super colossal figure, but this one is actually custom colored. Check out this awesome green camo painting. It's even got some battle damage on its side too. Now let's get started with our smaller T-Rex and I-Rex figures. Let's grab this Camp Cretaceous Extreme Battle Damage I-Rex figure. It's quite a bit smaller than the super colossal version, but it has some action buttons. One for the jaws and another button to activate the battle damage. Let's set this I-Rex right next to the super colossal. For our next T-Rex, we've got the Hammond Collection Tyrannosaurus Rex. This figure features much more intricate painting than many of the Mattel figures, and it is very adjustable and posable as well. Let's set this up right next to the super colossal. Let's grab our next I-Rex figure. We're gonna go with this hybrid, crazy looking I-Rex. It's got a bright red color all the way down its back, some crazy coloring, and some gold on the side as well. And check out this feature. That is pretty cool. Let's set this up right underneath the super colossal figure. And grabbing our next T-Rex figure, let's go with this custom colored Fire T-Rex. This figure is quite a bit smaller than the Hammond Collection figure, but it has even cooler painting in my opinion. Let's set this one up to face off with the I-Rexes. Back to the I-Rexes, we've got this older Jurassic World Indominus Rex figure. And this one's pretty unique because it actually has a rubberized neck and jaw. Let's set this up right next to the bright I-Rex figure. The next T-Rex figure is the Jurassic World Dominion T-Rex. It's got a lot of darker detailing along its body compared to other T-Rex figures, and it has an awesome, huge chomping action. Let's set this T-Rex up way in the back. For the I-Rexes, let's go ahead and grab this other huge figure. Now this Indominus Rex figure is pretty similar to the battle damage version, but it does not have the battle damage on the side. Instead, it has a button that swings its arms. And let's set this one up in the back too. For the T-Rexes, let's grab this slightly smaller T-Rex. It's got the dark brown coloring on top and the gray-brown coloring on the sides. And of course, it's got a roar and chomping action. Let's set this one up real close to the Indominus Rexes. We're getting pretty close. Back to the I-Rexes, let's grab this really strange-looking I-Rex figure. This is by Imaginex, and this figure has a super cool swinging and chomping action. Look at that, it swings its whole neck and torso around. Let's set this up right next to its other buddies. Our next T-Rex figure is an orange version with battle damage painted all over its body. It's got damage on its torso, on its leg, its tail, and even its face too. Let's set this dino up right next to the other T-Rexes. I've got another huge I-Rex figure right here, and this one might be the craziest colored of them all. This figure is the exact same size as these other two figures here, but it's got some crazy orange, purple, blue, and black. Here's another extreme battle damage Tyrannosaurus Rex. I believe this one was from Camp Cretaceous. Let's check out that battle damage right on the side. Let's set this T-Rex up in the back, right next to the Dominion T-Rex. Here is the Sound Surge Indominus Rex. It's a lot smaller than many of the other figures, but this one comes with some really cool sound effects. Let's sneak this Indominus Rex right back here. I've also got the Sound Surge T-Rex figure as well. Let's check out these sound effects. Let's put this little T-Rex underneath the larger T-Rexes. Next up, I believe this is part of the Rowdy Roars collection. Here is another wild-looking I-Rex. Check it out, it's got a chomping and biting action. It's pretty cool. Let's put this right front and center. For the T-Rex side, we've got a special hybrid T-Rex. Check out the spikes that pop out of its back. That is super cool looking. Let's set this up close to the front. For the I-Rexes, we've got a smaller figure. This one has some battle damage right on the side that you can open and close. Plus, you can chomp the jaw by moving the tail. I think we've got a little more space in the front up here. And here is our last big T-Rex figure for this Versus collection. This is a red and black spotted T-Rex. Plus, it's got a little action button on its back to chomp its jaw. And we'll set it down right behind the T-Rex with the spikes. Here's an even smaller I-Rex figure. It's got some battle damage on the side. You can't open and close, but you can still use the tail to chomp the jaw. Let's set this I-Rex right in the front here. We're getting real close now. And finally, we've got some miniature T-Rex and I-Rex figures right here. Let's go ahead and set up this completely clear I-Rex figure in the front. And on the opposing side, this tiny orange T-Rex. All right, now they are all in formation. Which side do you think would win? The I-Rexes or the T-Rexes? This
This is a collection of Predator versus Predator figures from Jurassic World, and we're going to be comparing all of them against each other. The first two figures to face off in this collection is this Spinosaurus and this battle-damaged T-Rex. Let's check out the Spinosaurus first. This is the Legacy Collection Spinosaurus, so this one's actually pretty hard to find nowadays. It's got the huge front arms, it's got a long and narrow snout with a lot of teeth, and this figure is quite a bit larger than its opponent, the battle-damaged T-Rex. This figure is a bright orange color. It's got battle-damaged slashes painted all over its body, even right on its face and on its chin. Now this T-Rex has tiny arms compared to the Spinosaurus, but it's still got the same jaw-chomping action. Next up for the versus is this T-Rex versus this Allosaurus figure. Let's start with the T-Rex. This is the Jurassic World Dominion battle-damaged T-Rex. It's got a darker orange body than the T-Rex that we just saw, and you can turn the battle damage on and off with the click of a button, and overall it has some pretty cool detailing and darker shading. Now let's see what's different about this huge Allosaurus figure, also from Jurassic World Dominion. Now this figure also has battle damage on the side, but you can even open it up and move the ribs to show the stomach underneath. Now this Allosaurus is a little bit smaller than the T-Rex, but it still has an awesome button for jaw chomping and sound effects. Up next for our Predator competition is this Jurassic Park Utah Raptor versus this new Dino Trackers Endoraptor. Let's first check out this Endoraptor. It is super reflective, it's a dark blue color. I think it might be just around the same size as the Utah Raptor, but it's got some really cool actions. First, you can move its arms for some sound effects and a jaw-chomping action. And it's also got a button on its back for more jaw-chomping action. Now let's see how this super old Utah Raptor holds up. You can see that little Jurassic Park tattoo on its leg right there. Now this figure used to be battery operated, but unfortunately since it's so old, it doesn't work anymore. Like many of the vintage Jurassic Park figures, it has a soft rubbery skin, and it still has a chomping action when you press down on its tail. Next, let's go with a Carnotaurus versus an Albertosaurus. The Albertosaurus is a little bit smaller than the Carnotaurus, and it has much brighter coloring. It's got the orange stripe running down its side and the green body, and the tail twists back and forth to control the head and chomp the jaw. Now let's check out this bigger Carnotaurus figure. This figure is dark brown with a gray underbelly. It's got even smaller arms than a T-Rex does. And you'll notice that the Albertosaurus arms are a little bit bigger. And just like the Albertosaurus, the tail swivels back and forth to move the head and for a jaw-chomping action. For our next versus, let's grab this other Carnotaurus figure versus this Suchomimus. Let's start with the Carnotaurus. This figure is a bit smaller than the darker Carnotaurus that we just saw. The coloring overall is a lot more simplistic. There's not anywhere near as much shading. There's a little bit of white underneath its chin and some dark coloring on its neck and the top of its head. And the actions are a bit more simplistic too. There is one button at the top of its back for some sound effects. Let's compare that to this bright yellow Suchomimus figure. This Jurassic World figure stands a little bit taller than the Carnotaurus figure. It's got a huge spine that runs all the way from the head down to the tail. And just like the Spinosaurus, it has a long and narrow snout with a bunch of teeth on the inside. And this figure has two actions. The first is a jaw-chomping action, and the second is a tail-swinging action. Our next two predators are this huge Scorpius Rex figure and this even larger T-Rex figure. Let's start with the T-Rex figure. It's got a light brown body with the darker coloring along the top, and you can move all its limbs, and it has the single button on the top of its head for the chomping action. Now the Scorpius Rex has a few more features. First off, I love the detailing on this figure. There's some bumps. You can see this huge ridge running down its back. It's got these tiny little spikes on its elbows. And of course, it's got the poisonous quills on the end of its tail. And it still has two action buttons. The first moves its jaw, and check out those super awesome teeth. And the second button moves its arms for slashing. Our next two predators are first a Carcharodontosaurus versus a Cryolophosaurus. The Carcharodontosaurus is definitely a little bit bigger, but the Cryolophosaurus is a brighter yellow than the Carcharodontosaurus. Comparing the size, the Carcharodontosaurus is a little bit bigger, And the Cryolophosaurus is a brighter yellow color. It's got movable limbs, and you can use the tail to swing the head around. And the Carcharodontosaurus, though it's not as bright, it still has some bright orange running down its back and on its neck. And instead of the tail as the action button on this figure, there's a button on its back for a chomping action. Right here, we've got a Metriacanthosaurus versus an Allosaurus figure from Jurassic Park. Let's check out this vintage figure first. Now this Allosaurus looks quite a bit different from the new Jurassic World figures. It's got a different head shape and a slightly different body. But the cool thing about this figure is that there's multiple battle damage parts that you can take off of its body. Check that out, and even on its tail too. Look at all that battle damage. That is super cool. Now let's compare that with the Metriacanthosaurus. I believe this is from the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom era. It's pretty bright in color, and it's around the same size as the Allosaurus figure. And this one doesn't have any battle damage, but it does have an action button on its back to control the jaw. Before we continue on with the rest of the bin, let's actually open up this new Hammond Collection Concavinator. Alright, now I think I only have one other Concavinator figure in my entire collection, so I'm super happy to add this one. It looks like it has quite a few different colors on its body. It's mainly got this blue, and there's some bright orange, brown, light tan, and then a very dark red right around its eyes. And since it's a Hammond Collection figure, it doesn't have any action buttons, but its body is super posable. You can bend it at all of its limbs and joints. And its neck and head is especially posable, which I really like. All in all, I think this figure stands up to the quality of all of the other Hammond Collection figures. Next up for our Predator versus Predator, we've got another Carnotaurus versus an Allosaurus. The Carnotaurus figure is quite a bit larger than the Allosaurus, so let's check this one out first. Now this figure has a bright orange body with the gray underbelly. It's got the tiny little front arms, just like the figure we saw earlier, and it also has the tail that you can move back and forth to move the head and chomp the jaw. Now let's see what's different about this Allosaurus figure. I think this one is even brighter in color. It's got the yellow and 2 tones of blue. It's got bigger front arms than the Carnotaurus figure. It's also got a tiny little row of spines running down its back to its tail. And this figure has 2 action buttons. The first operates the jaw, and the second moves the arms up and down. The next 2 predators are this Dilophosaurus versus the Scorpiovenator. These figures are around the same size, but you'll see that the Dilophosaurus is a little bit longer. Now this Dilophosaurus is the basic edition, so there is no action button. You can move the limbs a little bit, and you can activate the frills, but sadly that's pretty much it. Let's see how that compares against the Scorpiovenator. This figure is pretty brightly colored as well, and you can move all of the limbs, but this figure does have an action button. When you press down on its back, it activates the chomping action. Check out those sound effects too. Next, we've got the Siatsmicararum versus the Irritator. Between these two, the Siatsmicararum is definitely the larger dinosaur. It's got tons of spikes on its head, running all the way down to its back. And like many of the other figures we've seen so far, you can move the tail back and forth to move its head and chomp its jaw. Now let's check out its competitor, this Irritator. Although it's a little bit smaller, it still has some really cool coloring with the 2 tones of blue on the top. And on this figure, you can use the tail to move the head around as well, although you have to open and close the mouth manually. Let's keep on going. For our next versus, we've got a Ceratosaurus versus an Indoraptor, and see how much longer the Indoraptor is compared to the Ceratosaurus. This Indoraptor is the basic edition, so once again, there are no action buttons that you can press, but you can still move its arms, legs, and its tail, and it's still got some awesome spikes on its body. Let's see how the Ceratosaurus is different. It's got a dark green body with some black detailing on the top. This dinosaur seems a lot more bulkier in size. And of course, it's got an action at the top of its back for roaring and sound effects. This is the Baryonyx versus the Amber Collection Raptor. I think the Baryonyx is a little bit bigger, but this Raptor is so much more brighter. Because this figure is from the Amber Collection, there's a lot more attention to the coloring, and the limbs can be posed in many more different ways too. This figure is perfect for posing on a display shelf. Now let's check out its competitor, the Baryonyx. Because this figure isn't from the Amber Collection, there's not as much that you can pose on its body, but the cool part about this figure is that it has an action button on its back. Check out that chomping action. Now let's compare two very different dinosaurs. This is a Pteranodon versus an Allosaurus. This Pteranodon figure has foldable wings that you can open up, and it's probably a foot in length from wingtip to wingtip, and it's got a button on its back to flap the wings too. Plus, you can open and close its mouth manually. Now let's see this Allosaurus figure. This one is pretty simplistic in color. It has the gray on the sides and then the yellow detailing all along the top. Of course, it's got the iconic ridge right above its eye. And on this figure, there's one single action button for the jaw. These next two figures are smaller. I believe this one is called an Elaphrosaurus versus, if I remember correctly, the Rugops Primus figure. The Elaphrosaurus has a long and narrow snout and is mostly tan. It's got some brown as well. But this other figure, it's got darker coloring as well, and you can move its tiny little arms and open and close its mouth. Up next, we've got two different raptor species. This first one is a Pyroraptor from Jurassic World Dominion, and this other one is, I believe, an Amber Collection Velociraptor. Just like many of the other Amber Collection figures, it is a lot more posable than many of the normal figures, and they did a pretty decent job with its coloring as well. And the Pyroraptor has some decent detailing. You can check out all those feather designs right there. And the coolest part, I think, about the Pyroraptor are these huge feathers right at the top of its head. And next, we've got a Jurassic World miniature T-Rex figure versus a Jurassic Park Velociraptor. Both these figures are pretty old, but this Velociraptor is the oldest. It's got a spring-loaded chomping action, and it features some pretty unique coloring that I don't think I have another Velociraptor that's colored like this. Now let's check out this other miniature T-Rex figure. This specific figure comes from an older line from Jurassic World. I think it was actually made by Hasbro, so it's got some battle damage right there on the side. And on this figure, you can move the tail back and forth and side to side to operate the jaw and the head. Today on Amazing Dinosaurs, we are checking out Jurassic World Dino Trackers and Roar Attack Collection. I've got some new ones over here as well. Let's get started with the Dino Trackers, because those are the newest figures. This first one is the Diabloceratops. It's got some crazy horns in the front and some unique dark red coloring. Plus, it has an action button on its back to move its head back and forth. This is from the Gigantic Tracker series. This is the Stegosaurus. It's got some pretty bright coloring all over its body. You can see there's all sorts of little specks of different color in there as well. And it comes with this awesome Dino Tracker backpack. And it has two action buttons. One swings the tail up and down, and the other swings the tail back and forth. Next up is another gigantic tracker. This is the Sinotyrannus. It's got a dark green body with some red detailing on its tail, on its neck, and on its head. It comes with these interesting binocular light type of things. And it has two action buttons on its back. One moves its head, and the other moves its tail. Next up is the Track and Attack Endoraptor. This is one of the newest Endoraptors released. If you pull on its arms, it moves its head. And it has a button on its back to open its mouth. Check out that awesome reflective blue coloring too. Here we've got the Dryptosaurus from the Dino Trackers series. This figure is mostly darker in colors, but it does have tons of spikes along its body, and it has a dual action button on its back that you can use to move its head back and forth. This is the Chronosaurus from the Dino Trackers series. It is an aquatic dinosaur, so it's got 4 fins, and this figure also has the dual action button on its back to move its head back and forth. And next up for the Dino Trackers, we have the Austroraptor figure. So this figure is in the same family as a Velociraptor, but you can see it has a much longer and narrower snout. And on this figure, you can adjust the tail, the legs, the arms, the neck, and the mouth. All right, let's check out this new Dino Trackers set that I'm adding to my collection. This is the Search and Smash Truck set. Let's first check out this Atrociraptor. It's about the same size as some of the other mini Atrociraptor figures that I have. It's got some pretty unique coloring though. It's got some bright red-orange coloring along the front, while the rest of its body is a soft tan color with a little bit of black on the top. And this set actually comes with a tracker that you can put right on to the Atrociraptor. Check that out, it's pretty cool. This set also comes with a soldier who's got a brown vest and also a weapon. And the biggest part of all is this Jeep. And it has a special feature where you can press down on the hood and it'll actually capsize. And next up from the Dino Trackers is the Elaphrosaurus. This figure's got some soft blue coloring with some green detailing, and it's got a real mean looking face. All right, moving on to the Roar Attack series, we've got the Baryonyx Chaos figure. This figure has some bright blue detailing along the top of its head and a slide lever action for the sound effects and chomping action. Here is our first Allosaurus figure. This figure has the brown body with the blue detailing along the top. It's got some little spikes running down its spine, and it's got the slide lever action on its back for the roaring and sound effects. Next up from Roar Attack is this Ceratosaurus figure. It's a bit smaller than the Allosaurus figure. It's got the red and black coloring along the top, and of course the slide lever action for the chomping and the roar sound effects. This next figure is actually a Mega Destroyer figure. This is the Carcharodontosaurus. It's got an action button right on its back for the chomping. And you can move its arms, its legs, and its tail too. Here's another Mega Destroyer Carcharodontosaurus. It's pretty much the same aside from this awesome coloring. It's got the blue and the orange and brown, and of course the action button on its back for chomping. Here is the next Roar Attack Allosaurus. This one has the dark green, white, and red. And you can move its arms, its legs, and its tail. And it has the slide lever button on its back to activate the sound effects. Here is another Mega Destroyer. This is the Pentaceratops. And this figure is quite large. It's got the soft brown body with the gray detailing and two action buttons. The first moves its head up and down, and the second swivels its entire torso back and forth. And these are probably some of the largest horns that I've seen. This is the Roar Attack Kentrosaurus. It's got spikes all over its body, but the coolest part are these huge spikes coming right out of the side. And you can actually swing those spikes back and forth using this slide lever action. This is the Mega Destroyer Stegosaurus figure with the camouflage green, tan, and brown coloring. And it's got the hidden action button that you can press to swing its entire torso and its tail back and forth. And those are some pretty long spikes too. This is the Ceratosaurus figure with the dark green and black coloring. It's got the tiny little horn on its head, and there's a slide lever action for the chomping and sound effects. This one's an interesting looking dinosaur. This is the Oranosaurus from Roar Attack. It's got a huge spine running along its back and a slide lever action on its side to move the head up and down. This next figure is Ankylosaurus Bumpy. It's got the huge shell on its back, the spikes coming off the side, and a slide lever action to swing its tail back and forth. And last of all, we've got Baryonyx Limbo in the green, dark green, and brown coloring. You can move its arms, its legs, and its tail, and you can use the slide lever action to open and close its mouth.
Today we're checking out Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom versus Camp Cretaceous, and we're going to be putting them all side by side on this super long table for a size comparison. So let's get started with the biggest ones from Camp Cretaceous. This first one is the super colossal Indominus Rex figure. This figure features some really cool looking teeth. It's got huge claws on its hands. It's got some cool detailing along its whole body, a ton of spikes along its back as well. This one is definitely the biggest, and we're gonna put this right here in the Camp Cretaceous line. The next largest is also from Camp Cretaceous, actually. This is Carnotaurus Toro. This is the super colossal figure. And this figure features the classic clay and brown coloring along the body, along with the battle damage right along its nose, and the two massive horns as well. Let's put this right next to the Indominus Rex on the Camp Cretaceous line. Unfortunately, Fallen Kingdom does not have any super colossal figures, but we'll get started with the biggest figures that I do have from Fallen Kingdom. This first one is a giant T-Rex, and this one features some pretty cool attack moves. If you move its tail, it lifts its head up for a roar, and if you move the tail downwards, it actually chomps it towards the ground. Plus, you can move it side to side to swivel the head too. So we're gonna put this first Fallen Kingdom dinosaur right here. All of our Fallen Kingdom dinosaurs will go along the front right here, and Camp Cretaceous will go along the back. Let's go ahead and grab another Fallen Kingdom dinosaur. This is another T-Rex, but this is the battle damage edition. You can see it has a lot of the same coloring along most of its body as the first T-Rex, but it's got some really cool battle damage coloring. You can see some slashes on its neck, on its chin, and all over its body. And it is a little bit smaller than the first T-Rex, so let's set him down right next to it. Moving on to the next largest Camp Cretaceous, we've got the Spinosaurus figure from Camp Cretaceous with the tan coloring. It's got the super long snout and some really big front arms. You'll notice that the arms on a Spinosaurus are a lot larger than on a T-Rex figure. Look how much bigger it is on a Spinosaurus. Now let's go ahead and set this Spinosaurus next in line on the Camp Cretaceous line. Look at that size difference between the super colossal figure and this Spinosaurus. That is a huge difference. Next from Fallen Kingdom, I think the next biggest figure is the Grab and Growl Indoraptor figure. This figure features super long front arms. It's also got a long tail and two attack buttons on its tail. The first activates its claws for slashing back and forth, and the second button activates the jaw. And you can see that its eyes light up as well. That is really cool. Let's set this down next to the battle damage T-Rex. Going back to Camp Cretaceous, our next biggest dinosaur figure is this Carnotaurus figure. And let's check it out compared to the super colossal version way up there. Check out the color difference. This one's a lot darker brown. They both have the damage on their nose though, which is pretty cool. And this Carnotaurus has a button on its tail to activate its jaw too. From Fallen Kingdom, we actually have a Carnotaurus figure as well. This one is a little bit smaller compared to the Camp Cretaceous Carnotaurus. You can see the size difference right there, and the color difference as well. And this figure has a button on its back to activate its jaw and its neck as well. Next from Camp Cretaceous, we've got the Scorpius Rex figure. I think this is the largest Scorpius Rex figure that I have. It's got the yellow underbelly and the black sides and the darker black top. And this figure features some pretty cool attack buttons as well. One for the jaw and then one for slashing the arms too. Let's set this down next to the Carnotaurus. From the Fallen Kingdom toy line, we've got another Indoraptor figure that is slightly smaller than the Grab and Growl Indoraptor. It still has the same coloring and many of the same features, but this one doesn't have any attack buttons or anything like that, but it is super posable. From Camp Cretaceous, we've got an Albertosaurus figure with the green and orange coloring. This figure reminds me a lot of a T-Rex, but it's got some differences in some spikes on the top of its head, and I think the shape of this dinosaur's head is a little bit different than a T-Rex as well. So let's go ahead and put this on the Camp Cretaceous line right here, next in size. Next in size from Fallen Kingdom is the Suchomimus figure in the blue and yellow coloring. And it's got an action button on its back for the chomping or roaring action. This is a really colorful dinosaur. Let's put this right next to the Indoraptor figure. Next is the Camp Cretaceous Cryolophosaurus figure.
This figure is also in a dark blue color, just like the Suchomimus, but it also has some orange along its back and its head as well. Next up is the Fallen Kingdom Allosaurus figure in the gray and yellow coloring. This figure features some cool detailing along the top of its head. It's got those really tall crown eyebrow-like things, and it's got an action button on its back for chomping its jaw open and shut. Let's set this down next to the Suchomimus. From Camp Cretaceous, we've got a Baryonyx figure in the two-toned green and the brown coloring along the top. This figure features a slide lever action to open and shut the jaw, along with a ton of different sound effects. Now let's put this on the Camp Cretaceous line. Here is the Fallen Kingdom Ceratosaurus figure. This figure has some red, yellow, and black on its body, and it features movable arms, legs, and a tail, and the button on its back to operate the jaw. For Camp Cretaceous, we've got another Baryonyx figure, also with the green and brown, but slightly different coloring. And this figure just has a button on its back to activate the jaw and the sound effects too. On the Fallen Kingdom side, we've got a Metriacanthosaurus figure with this dark yellow and green coloring. This figure features movable arms and legs, and it has a button on the top of its back to activate the jaw. All right, that's looking good so far. Next, for Camp Cretaceous, we've got the reflective Parasaurolophus figure. This figure features some really cool coloring. Look how shiny and reflective that is. It also has a tail that moves the head around, and there are adjustable legs on both the back and the front as well. This is the Fallen Kingdom Stegosaurus figure. It's in a teal bluish color. It's also got the lighter underbelly. And this figure features a slashing attack with its tail when you press down on its spine right there. Let's set this down next in the Fallen Kingdom line. For Camp Cretaceous, we've got a Sinoceratops figure in the green, tan, and kind of a darkish orange color. It's also got some yellow eyes, and this figure features a tail that activates the neck so you can move it around, and the sound effects as well. For Fallen Kingdom, I believe that this is a Sinoceratops as well. It looks quite a bit different, it has some different coloring, and some different horns on the front as well. And this figure features a button on its back that moves its head up and down. Here's another Sinoceratops figure, but this one is from Camp Cretaceous, and it's got some interesting coloring. The all black eyes, its body is mostly this light gray-blue coloring with some tan detailing all over as well. And this figure features the tail that you can use to move its neck around as well. On the Fallen Kingdom side, I've got another Triceratops figure in the clay orange coloring, and it's got brown detailing along the top. This figure features some huge horns on its face and an action button on its back for a slashing or a roaring action. And here is the last Triceratops of this video. This one is from Camp Cretaceous. It's got the brown and blue coloring, the huge horns in the front, and the tail that controls the head. Next in size for Fallen Kingdom is this Ankylosaurus figure. It's got the huge spikes coming out of its side, as well as the hard shell on top, and an action button along its back for swinging its tail back and forth. From Camp Cretaceous, we've got a Sarcosuchus figure with the purple, orange, red, and gray-blue coloring. This figure features a really long torso, a super long mouth, and some short stubby legs, as well as an action button on its tail to open and close the jaw, and to move its head around too. Now we're getting down to the real small figures. This is the Velociraptor blue figure from Fallen Kingdom. And this features movable legs, arms, and you can open and close its mouth as well. I've also got a Velociraptor from Camp Cretaceous here. This one is a green with darker green striping. And this figure actually features an attack button on its back that moves its claws back and forth. Let's put it right there on the Camp Cretaceous line. For Fallen Kingdom, we've got a Stygimoloch figure with the orange and purple detailing. And this figure has an action with its tail used for headbutting. And let's put this right at the end of the Fallen Kingdom line. I've also got a Stygimoloch figure for Camp Cretaceous as well. This one also has the clay coloring with the purple detailing, but this one does not feature an attack button with its tail to move its head back and forth for headbutting. And the last Fallen Kingdom figure in this collection is this extreme battle damage Herrerasaurus. You can see that you can open and close it right there on the side. And for our final dinosaur is the Monolophosaurus from Camp Cretaceous. This figure features an action where you can move its tail to open and close its jaw. All right, there is our entire Camp Cretaceous versus Fallen Kingdom, biggest to smallest. Let's check out all these Camp Cretaceous figures from big to small. And our Fallen Kingdom from biggest to smallest. Today on Amazing Dinosaurs, we are checking out 100 Jurassic World figures. I've got Camp Cretaceous, I've got Jurassic World Dominion, there's Fallen Kingdom, and a whole lot more. The first figure is this giant Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's got a dark green body with the yellow underbelly and the black top and a button that activates the jaw. This figure is the Dino Tracker series Endoraptor. Check it out. And there's a button on its back that activates the jaw too. Here is the Camp Cretaceous Spinosaurus. This figure is ginormous, and it's got the button at the top of its head to activate the jaw. Over here we've got another Tyrannosaurus Rex figure. This one's a little bit smaller, it's got the brown coloring and the jaw attack button. This is the Dino Tracker's Sinotyrannus figure. It's got two buttons on its back, one to activate the jaw and one to activate the tail. Here is the Suchomimus figure with the dark blue and yellow coloring. It's got the big spine running down its back and an attack button for its jaw. Here is an old Jurassic World figure. This one was actually custom painted to be red and black, and it has an action button on its back to activate the jaw. This is the Carcharodontosaurus figure with the blue, orange, and brown coloring. This is the Albertosaurus figure in the green and orange coloring, and it has an attack button on its tail to operate the jaw. Next up is the Sound Surge Tyrannosaurus Rex from Jurassic World Dominion. Here's another Dino Trackers figure. This is the Diabloceratops. Check out that awesome red coloring and this action button that moves its head. This Pteranodon figure, I believe, is part of the Amber collection. It actually has rubberized wings, so it feels really realistic. This is the Rowdy Roars Carnotaurus figure. It's got the classic coloring for a Carnotaurus and an action button for chomping. Here is the gigantic tracker Stegosaurus. It comes with this cool backpack feature, and it has two buttons on its back that swing the tail up and down and back and forth. Here is a classic Baryonyx figure with the reflective blue coloring on the top of its head. Next up, we've got a Cryolophosaurus figure in the bright yellow coloring with the brown and orange detailing. This figure right here is a Spinosaurus. This is a basic figure, so there's not a whole lot you can do with it, but you can move its arms, its legs, and its tail. Here from Jurassic World Dominion is an Iguanodon figure. It's got the soft tan coloring and an attack button when you press down on its back. This figure is a Kentrosaurus. It looks quite a bit like a Stegosaurus, but it's got these huge spikes on the side that you can swing back and forth. This figure, I believe, is called an Edmontosaurus. It's got some pretty cool coloring, and you can use the tail to control the head. Next up, we've got a basic Velociraptor figure in the orange color. You can move its arms, its legs, and its tail. Here is the dark green Ceratosaurus figure. It has a slide lever action on its back to activate the sound effects and its chomping action. This is a Triceratops figure in the brown, blue, and dark blue coloring. And on this figure, you can move the tail to move the head around. Here is an older and pretty rare Jurassic World figure. This is a hybrid Tyrannosaurus and Dilophosaurus. And check out that super bright coloring. Up next, we've got a Spinosaurus figure in the soft green coloring. And this figure features the tail that you can use to move the head around. This next figure is an Allosaurus in the gray and yellow coloring, and it has an attack button on its back to chomp its jaw open and closed. Here's a dinosaur figure that I don't have that many of. This is a Concavinator. It's got a huge spine on its back that actually you can press to swing its tail back and forth. Plus, there's an action button on the front of its back to chomp its jaw open and closed. Here is a Pteranodon figure with foldable wings. And when it's fully expanded, it's probably over a foot long. Plus, there's a button on its back to flap its wings back and forth. Here is a miniature Indominus Rex figure with a little bit of battle damage on its side. I've also got this older Jurassic World Allosaurus figure, and it looks quite a bit different from the new Allosaurus figures that Mattel is releasing. Up next is a miniature Dilophosaurus figure with the purple and some bright yellow, red, and orange. This is a Moros Intrepidus figure from Jurassic World Dominion. It's got the green, orange, and white body. Here is a Velociraptor Beta figure. It's got the classic blue stripe down both sides, and you can move its arms, its legs, and its tail too. Next, I've got a battle damage Atrociraptor figure. Check it out, you can turn on and off the battle damage with the click of a button. Here is a Pachycephalosaurus figure in the orange and green coloring, and it has an action. We press down on the tail and it headbutts. Check out this crazy looking dinosaur. I actually can't remember the name of it, so let me know in the comments below if you know what it is. Here is a super bright Velociraptor figure with the red and the green stripes on top. Plus, it's actually spring-loaded. Up next, I've got a Zuniceratops figure with the green and dark blue coloring. Check out those huge horns on the top of its head, too. Here's another spring-loaded Velociraptor. This one is brown, though. Up next is a small Parasaurolophus figure. And actually, what comes with this figure is a Dr. Ian Malcolm figure. This is a Dimetrodon figure with a huge bright orange spine all the way down its back. This figure is the baby Brachiosaurus with the light green and darker green coloring on top. Here I've got a Monolophosaurus figure with the brown and gray detailing. From Jurassic World Dominion, this is another Atrociraptor figure. This one has the orange and the tan striping. I've also got a miniature Pyroraptor figure here. This one has the classic red and black coloring, along with the feather texture along all of its body. I've also got some more miniature Velociraptor figures in here. This first one has an action button on its back to swing its arms back and forth. And I've also got this bright yellow and brown Velociraptor figure too. It's got some battle damage right there on the side. This unusual figure is a Minmi dinosaur. It's got the spikes all the way down its back and on top of its head. This next figure is a baby T-Rex, and it comes with an action. When you move its tail, it chomps its jaw open and closed. And here we've got a miniature Pteranodon figure. Plus it has an action button on its back to flap its wings. Let's open up some brand new ones next. Let's see what this one is. These are a bunch of uncaged, wild pop-ups. First up, we've got Velociraptor Blue. Next up is a Dilophosaurus. There's also a Carnotaurus. And best of all, a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Next up, I've got a new Jurassic World Dominion Triceratops figure. Let's check it out. This Triceratops has the soft green body with the darker green and the orange in the front. Let's move on to our second bin here. This figure is the Spinosaurus from Jurassic World Dominion. It's got a button right on its tail to activate the jaw. Up next is the Ankylosaurus from Jurassic World Dominion. It has a super long neck and an action button to activate the jaw. Now here is a really cool looking T-Rex. This is a custom colored T-Rex to look like fire. And of course, it's got the button at the top of its head to open and close its jaw. Here is the Scorpius Rex figure from Camp Cretaceous. It's got 2 action buttons, one to activate its jaw and one to activate its arms. This is a battle damage baryonyx figure. You can check out that battle damage on its neck and on its leg, and it has an action button on its back for chomping. This interesting looking dinosaur is an Amargospinus. This dinosaur also has a long neck and some amazing looking spines on its back. Here is the Jurassic World Dominion T-Rex with the Battle Damage Edition. You can click the battle damage on and off just with the button on top. Here's a vintage Jurassic World figure. This one is actually a hybrid T-Rex. I think it's mixed with a Spinosaurus. Check it out. It's got some spines that pop out right at the top of its back. Next up, we've got the amazing Therizinosaurus from Jurassic World Dominion. You can use the tail to swivel its body around and use the action button on its tail to open and close the jaw. Next up, we've got a Stegosaurus figure in the light blue-green color. Plus, it has an action button. When you press down here, it swings its tail back and forth. Here's one of the largest Atrociraptor figures that I have. This one comes in the classic white with brown striping. I've got another extreme battle damage T-Rex here, but instead of battle damage shown right here, there's actually painted battle damage all over its body. Next up, I've got a Sarcosuchus figure. This dinosaur is really long and short, and you can use the tail to control the head. Here's another T-Rex figure. This one is in a soft brown with darker brown along the top, and of course the action button at the top of the head to operate the jaw. Next up, this figure is the Giganotosaurus. It has 2 action buttons, one to swing its torso, and one to open and close the jaw. This is the Indoraptor with the gold stripe and the black body, and it is a very posable dinosaur figure. This is the basic Velociraptor blue figure. You can move its arms, its legs, and its tail, and of course it's got the awesome iconic coloring. From the Hammond collection here, we've got the Baryonyx figure. It is very posable, and it's got some awesome coloring too. Here's a crazy looking dinosaur. This is a special edition Ankylosaurus figure. It actually has a removable shell. I've also got the regular edition Ankylosaurus as well. This figure is from Jurassic World Dominion. This is the Sound Surge Giganotosaurus figure. Check it out, it's another Sarcosuchus figure, but this one has some different coloring with the purple, orange, red, and blue. Here is another Ceratosaurus figure, but this one is in the brown and orange coloring. Let's check out that chomping action. Here is a vintage Jurassic World Mosasaurus figure. It's a lot smaller than the figures that are coming out with now, and it's got some battle damage that you can open and close right on the side. Next up is one of the largest winged dinosaurs. This is the Quetzalcoatlus. This figure has 2 action buttons, one to flap the wings and the other to open and close the mouth. This figure is super old. This is a Jurassic Park Spinosaurus figure. Here are a few small figures. These are both Gallimimuses. I've got another Dimetrodon figure in here. This one has an action. When you press down on its tail, it opens and closes its jaw. This winged figure is a Dimorphodon. Check out those fiery wings. From Camp Cretaceous, we've got a baby Ankylosaurus Bumpy figure. This next figure is from Jurassic World Dominion. This is Amiragaya. Check out those huge spikes coming out of its shoulders. Next up, we've got another classic Ceratosaurus figure. This one has the yellow, black, and red coloring. Here's another dinosaur with some huge spikes coming out of its back. This is a Sauropelta. This next little dinosaur, I believe, is called a Coelurus. It's got a tan body with some brown and some blue detailing. Over here, we've got some Monolophosaurus figures, one in a soft green color, and it's got some battle damage on the side, and one in a dark blue with some tan coloring. I've also got some more Velociraptor figures in here. I've got a Velociraptor Beta figure. Here's another spring-loaded, super bright Velociraptor figure. And a dark green Velociraptor in the stealth crawling pose. This next figure is a Carnotaurus, and this one is from Jurassic World Dominion. It's pretty unique because it's got the dark green body with the orange detailing, and it's also got a broken horn on the top of its head. Here is a Stygimoloch figure. It's got some gray and some dark blue coloring and some huge spikes coming out of its head. Plus, this figure has an action. When you press down on its tail, it activates the head buddy. Here we've got another aquatic dinosaur. I believe this one is called a Plesiosaurus, and it has one action button on its back to flap its flippers. And last of all, we've got a baby Triceratops figure in the light green coloring and some battle damage on the side that you can open and close.
Here it is. Today we are checking out some of the best and coolest carnivore figures from Jurassic World and ranking them from biggest over here all the way to the smallest over here. So let's get started with the biggest one, this super colossal custom colored T-Rex. This T-Rex has some fiery red coloring and is one of the brightest super colossal figures that I have. So let's put this at the very end as our biggest. And I've got another super colossal figure in this collection. This one is the Giganotosaurus. This figure has some reflective gold eyes and some of my favorite teeth on any Jurassic World figure. The next largest carnivore in this collection is this custom colored Indominus Rex. Just like the super colossal T-Rex over there, this one is colored super bright and very artistically rather than realistically. Let's set this down next in line. Next up, I've got another Indominus Rex figure, but this one is colored a lot more realistically. And this one is actually the original coloring of this custom painted one right over here. So they are actually identical in size. Next up is one of the coolest carnivores that I have. This is the Hammond Collection Tyrannosaurus Rex. This figure came out pretty recently, and this carnivore is one of my favorites because of how posable it is and how much more detail there is to its entire body. Next up is another Giganotosaurus figure. This one is nearly identical to the super colossal Giganotosaurus in its color and its details, but this figure actually has a few features. The first is a torso swinging action, and the second is a jaw chomping action. So let's set it down next in line. This next one is a T-Rex figure. This is actually a Terran T-Rex. Check it out, it's got two buttons on its back. The first activates the Terran action, and the second button swings its double jointed tail. This is a pretty massive T-Rex figure, so let's set this next in line. I've got another T-Rex right over here. This one is the Camp Cretaceous T-Rex. It's got some pretty realistic coloring all over its body, and it's got a button on its tail to activate the jaw with sound effects and roaring. All right, let's get this one next in line. Let's see here, the next one in size might actually be this brand new one right over here. This is the Sound Surge Indominus Rex. Let's check it out. So this Indominus Rex is quite a bit smaller than the one that we saw earlier. Check out the size difference here. It has similar coloring though. And the best part, of course, are the sound effects. Moving on to the next biggest carnivore, I think is this Yangchuanosaurus figure. And instead of sound effects on this figure, it has a button on its tail to activate the jaw. Check it out, I've actually got another Sound Surge dinosaur in here. This is the Carnotaurus edition. And let's check out those sound effects too.
Very cool. Let's set this down next in line. This figure right here is a newer figure. I believe it's called the Nano Tyrannus. And it's got two buttons hidden on its back. The first one activates its jaw, and the second one activates the tail. Next is another recently released dinosaur. This is the Eocarcharia. It's got the feather texturing all over its body and an action button on its back to activate the jaw. This figure was released as part of Jurassic World Dominion. This is a Scorpiovenator. It's got some pretty bright coloring, and it's got an action where you press down on its back and it chomps. Next, from Camp Cretaceous, we've got the Scorpius Rex. This actually isn't the largest Scorpius Rex that I have, but it has some really cool dark green coloring and a yellow underbelly, and fully adjustable arms, legs, tail, and head too. Way over here on the end, I've got the Ichthyovenator dinosaur. It's got the long, narrow snout, it's got the spine on its back, and it has the chomping action when you press down on its body. Here's another dinosaur that I bought recently. If I remember correctly, this is called a Dryptosaurus, or something very close to that. It's got spikes all over its body, a little bit of bright blue on its face, and an action button on its back to activate its jaws. Let's set that down right next to the Ichthyovenator. Next up is a pretty vintage and hard to find Jurassic Park Allosaurus figure. This figure is pretty cool because it actually has battle damage that you can take off completely to reveal the insides. And I think this one is the next biggest, so let's put this next in line. Next in size, we've got the Hammond Collection Baryonyx figure. I've got tons of Baryonyx figures, but this one is probably one of my favorite because of how adjustable and posable it is. So let's start a new line right up here as the next in size. Over here, we've got an older Ceratosaurus figure. This one is the brown and orange version, and it's got the action button on its back to activate the jaw. Let's set this down right next to the Baryonyx. Over here is a crazy looking figure. This is the Rowdy Roars Dilophosaurus. Let's go ahead and turn on the power, and let's see what it does. So you can touch the button on its head, or you can tap its chin, and it'll walk around. This one right next to it is the Majungasaurus. It's got some bright detailing running along its neck and its head, and with this figure, you can use the tail to move the head around in a real lifelike way. And finally, for this carnivore biggest to smallest collection is a Sarcosuchus figure. It's got the long, narrow snout, and there's a button on its tail to open and close its mouth, too. Want to see more dino videos? Click the subscribe button now.